Non-sponsored lending, as the name says, is lending to corporates which are owned by the families or founders, in contrast to businesses which are owned by private equity sponsors. And the differences in the lending to those types of companies are that, in contrast to a sponsor providing us with a diligence package, we as the manager of the fund need to do the diligence ourselves. So there's two different elements. Number one, we first of all need to find the family and founder-owned businesses, which is different to just interacting with a private equity sponsor and finding a business opportunity through those. And that typically requires to be on the ground in different jurisdictions and having a slightly different sourcing network. So there's a slightly different way of finding those opportunities. And then secondly, to do diligence on those opportunities. We need to undertake the diligence ourselves, and very often we need to interact much more directly with the management team and as well with the finance function. And last but not least, there's a lot more guidance, hand-holding required, because they are less experienced of going through a financing process. So overall, the time takes a bit longer, and probably the hit rate is slightly lower on those opportunities. Again, I think if the team is appropriately set up, I don't think there's more risks to the investors. As I just outlined, you need to get to the opportunities in a slightly different way. So that means that the team who's looking at the opportunities needs to have a slightly different origination background, probably more towards banks, towards smaller advisors who will interact then with those family founder-owned businesses. Secondly, obviously having a more private equity background where people are hands-on in doing diligence is not a bad thing as well. So people talk about the risks in direct lending being, for example, that the family or founder-owned businesses don't have additional cash they can put into a situation when maybe times become tough. That can be the case in certain circumstances, but sometimes, it's a family founder-owned business which actually has other assets which they could contribute in those circumstances. And obviously the other thing is, if we look at those businesses, we don't have a sponsor doing the same thing, so we are on our own. We are much more directly connected to the business, and in that extent we need to be absolutely sure what we are doing. We cannot just rely on the sponsor. Private debt is the overarching category for a number of subcategories, including direct lending, mezzanine, venture debt, and so on. Direct lending has seen an enormous amount of growth over the last few years. I think, that is there to stay. I believe the same, what we have seen in private equity, will happen in direct lending as well. So you see a much greater specialization. So far direct lending has been lending to, often sponsor-owned businesses with a certain size. I believe there will be specialists focusing more on the lower mid-market, on only non-sponsored situations, maybe on certain sectors and so on. So I believe there will be much more specialization over time. As often one ends up by, chance in an opportunity to go along with this career. I started in investment banking and M&A, then moved to leverage finance, and have spent the last 15 years in investing in the credit space. And I've always enjoyed the, multiple of things, but it's a combination of a very analytical work in combination with still a lot of interaction with businesses, with investors. So it has multiple, different characteristics which I enjoy. I would say my advice to women in general would be, I think having mentors, male or female, or sounding boards is always, a very useful thing. And secondly, I would say, I guess women might try to become men but actually women bring a lot of different skill sets which men might not have. So just being, true to those skills and bringing, a diverse skill set into the job is a very valuable thing, which, one shouldn't shy away from.